Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. Australia begins mourning after a father and son carry out a deadly shooting at a Jewish celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach, killing 16 people. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese calls it a dark moment for our nation as authorities describe the attack as targeted anti-Semitic violence. Hong Kong's High Court finds pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai guilty of sedition and collusion with foreign forces under a China-imposed security law. The verdict, which could carry a life sentence, draws international criticism and concerns over Hong Kong's rule of law. Security experts say Ukraine's offer to drop its NATO bid is unlikely to significantly shift peace talks with Russia. President Zelensky says security guarantees from the US and Europe would serve as a compromise in place of NATO membership. Syria says it arrests 5 suspects linked to a shooting in Palmyra that kills 2 US soldiers and a civilian interpreter. Authorities say the attacker, who is shot dead, is a member of the security forces suspected of sympathizing with Islamic State. US media report film director Rob Reiner and his wife are found dead at their Los Angeles home. Police say the 2 people are found dead at the residence but have not confirmed identities or named any suspects. A special prosecutor in South Korea indicts former President Yoon Suk-yeol and 23 others on insurrection charges. Prosecutors allege Yoon sought to provoke North Korea to justify a martial law declaration and crack down on political opponents. Nvidia says it is considering boosting production of its H200 AI chips after demand from Chinese tech companies exceeds current supply. The move follows a US decision to allow H200 exports to China with a 25% fee, though Beijing is yet to approve the purchases. Roomba maker iRobot files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and says it will go private after being acquired by its manufacturer. The company cites intense competition and new US tariffs as it struggles to stay in business. We start this hour in Australia, and a 10-year-old girl, Matilda, has been identified as one of the 15 killed in the Bondi Beach attack. She was celebrating the first night of Hanukkah with her family when the gunman opened fire. She died from her injuries in hospital. Meanwhile, as per the latest update from the New South Wales Health, 27 people are being treated in hospitals across Sydney after being injured in the mass shooting. These include 6 in critical condition, another 6 in critical but stable condition, and 13 people in stable condition. This number is lower than the previous update from the New South Wales Premier, Chris Min, who said there were 38 people being treated in hospital. Earlier, the Australian police had raided the home of the alleged gunman Sajid Akram and Naveed Akram. Sajid, a 50-year-old, was killed at the scene, taking the number of dead to 16, while his 24-year-old son is in critical condition in hospital. Let's in fact listen in to what the neighbour of the alleged gunman had to say.
Lots of police cars raided this street, and especially in that house. Yeah, so we couldn't sleep. We were watching everything. Yeah, it was so scary. We noticed them, they come and go every day. Yeah, and they never say hello or anything. They just normal. We thought they are normal people. Yeah, we were so shocked to notice that one of the guy who shoot people, they live in.
We're now joined by Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, an international relations and defence expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Dr. Kochhar, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Since yesterday, Australia has been in mourning. However, the two suspects, one deceased, have been identified to the public. What are the next steps in the investigation in regards to this tragic event?
Thank you, Thomas. It's rather unfortunate we saw this incident happening in Australia yesterday. I I offer my condolences to the families of those who have been killed. Uh, a very important question, because where do we go from here, and what has been the lapses? First, I will start with the intelligence aspects. In spite of intelligence being made available, and we have heard Prime Minister Netanyahu also making a mention of it, no action was taken by the Australian authorities. So I think that is one area which the Australian administration will have to look in. The threat perceptions have to be identified and have to be actioned upon. The second important aspect is the immigration laws. You see, what is happening in Australia is that Australia has a population of 27.2 million people, and there are 8.6 million immigrants in Australia, constituting a percentage of 31.5%. So if we take that as a benchmark, almost one-third of the people in Australia are immigrants. That is, they are born out of Australia. So if that is the case, what is the system of screening of people who are being brought into Australia, and especially these short-term visas are one major concern I want to highlight, because approximately 2.9 million people in Australia today are on short-term visa, and they constitute 10% of the population of Australia. Last year in 2024, 6 lakh people entered Australia on a short-term visa. So what is the screening process of these people who have been allowed to enter Australia? Because if I believe if this screening was stringent, they would have been able to identify the people with a radical mindset, even to the extent of checking their social media handles before they are given a visa, would be a prudent step to understand the mindset of individual, because normally an individual who has got hatred and anti-Semitic mind or a radicalized mind would also show on his social media, or the type of comments he's actually making on the social media. So I think that would be the second step as far as immigration is concerned. The third most important aspect is the policing in the districts or in the towns, or the role of the civil society. If we have been improvised explosive devices are being found there, and I believe this person had 6 firearms with him. So what is the licensing system in Australia, where one individual is possessing 6 weapons? What is the system of checks and balances? What is the system of issuing of licensing for the firearms? And also, how has he been able to obtain this raw material for the IEDs? Because an IED basically constitutes of a detonator, initiator, and explosive content. So from where these items have been made available to him, so I believe there is a larger group which is working in Australia. It is not this son and a father team. There are a larger number of people who are helping him. Some kind of sleeper cells are available there, and the involvement of the terrorist groups. I believe the ISIS link should also be explored by the intelligence agencies. Thomas.
Yes, and Dr. Kachar, the Australian government has pledged to tighten its gun laws. Now, after 1996, the Port Arthur massacre in Tasmania, Only 3 to 4% of the population now own firearms in Australia. How are these gun laws going to be tightened more? If we look at historical case studies like New Zealand, Dunblane in Scotland, for example, how do you expect the Australian government to act and tighten its already very restrictive gun laws?
Yeah, I was studying the system of licensing for the guns and the weapons in Australia. They have four categories. They have actually categorized as category A, B, C, and D. In A category, it's the bolt action or the shotguns. In the B category, it is the semi-automatic weapons, and the C and D category has got those automatic weapons and sophisticated kind of weapons, which are normally prohibited. A person will only get a license for a category A and B. So a point is, and also if a person applies for a license, there is a processing time of 28 days for the authorities to check if he has got any criminal record or any kind of thing is against him. But the reason I'm actually coming to is where this system needs to change, because that is your question, that what kind of system for the licensing. The first and important aspect is that no person can apply more than once for a license. He should be allowed only one firearm. The second aspect is that this category A and B, and if you want to grant a license, I think a period of 28 days is too short to give a license to him, because you need to investigate all aspects of the person who is residing in Australia. So that is the second aspect. The period for a grant of a license has to be increased to a minimum time of 60 days. The third important aspect is when an immigrant is asking for a license, then you have to be extremely very careful in granting him a license, because of this radicalization and indoctrination and all these aspects which are prevalent in the society today. Because most of these attacks, what we are seeing, are being orchestrated by these kind of people who are radicalized, who have got indoctrinized, and who are anti-Semitics. So we need to identify this strata of society and only then grant a license to these kind of people. Thomas.
Yes, Dr. Kachar, do stay with us. Here on News X World, of course, we'll continue to bring you all the updates coming out of Sydney as soon as we get them. Now we move on, and Providence authorities have confirmed that the person of interest, who is identified as Benjamin Erickson, will now be released from custody very soon. The Rhode Island Attorney General has said that after the police officials examined the evidence, they have decided to let go of the person of interest which they detained earlier today. Let's take a listen in.
Certainly there was some degree of evidence that pointed to this individual, but that evidence needed to be corroborated and confirmed. And over the last 24 hours, leading into just very recently, that evidence now points in a different direction. So what that means is that this person of interest needs to be and should be released. I think what is really unfortunate that this person's name was leaked to the public. It's hard to put that back in the bottle, okay? So we're going to proceed very carefully here. There is too much at stake for the victims of this horrific crime and their families to take chances with respect to this investigation.
Following up with this development, the Providence mayor has said that the news of releasing the detainee could be a bit stressful for the community, but he has reassured that there is heavy police presence throughout the city, especially around the Brown campus. Let's listen in.
We know that this is likely to cause fresh anxiety for our community. And we want to reiterate what we said earlier, which remains true, which is ever since the initial call, now a day and a half ago, we have not received any credible or specific threats to the Providence community. And so the status of safety in our community remains unchanged. And we believe that you remain safe in our community, though we will continue to have an enhanced police presence throughout the city and on the Brown campus.
The Brown University mass shooting took place on Saturday and claimed 2 lives and injured 9 others in the Providence city of Rhode Island. We turn now to Southeast Asia, and fierce fighting along the Cambodia-Thailand border has killed 12 Cambodians and injured 74, forcing more than 120,000 families to vacate the premises. Thailand has cut fuel shipments through Laos, citing concerns they might be diverted to Cambodian troops. Heavy weapons, including fighter jets, drones and cluster bombs, have targeted both civilian areas and military positions. Both countries accuse each other of aggression, with no sign of a ceasefire despite international pressure. Thailand is also considering restricting naval movements in high-risk areas, while Cambodia says it is defending its territory. The conflict has displaced hundreds of thousands and continues to threaten regional stability. Dr. Kochhar, of course, these are renewed clashes. As opposed to that of July, we've seen a US announcement of a ceasefire that was supposed to take place on Friday. That hasn't happened. Both leaders have said that fighting will indeed continue. Now we've seen about 24 people killed between both of the sides. Are we looking at a bit more than a local border clash here, or a risk of wider military confrontation?
Yes, clearly this Trump's peace plan has not worked with both Cambodia and Thailand, because you have to understand, see, we also are actually having border issues in our country, and once we understand, these ceasefires are always very, very fragile, because one small incident on the border, it can trigger a series of responses. And what is actually happening is that the genesis of the conflict, has to be addressed, because unless you address an issue by its root cause, just saying the ceasefire is not enough. And what is happening is that there is Cambodia, Thailand land border, 817 kilometers. Most of it is undemarcated. So there are issues of border alignment as we have with China. And you will find that transgression will keep on taking place. There is a temple issue also which is involved. It's a heritage site which has been declared by the UNESCO. And all these issues are pricking points in the relationship between the two countries. Now, what has happened is the escalation has happened. And when you start carrying out a stranglehold on the economics of the country, like if you are blocking their sea routes and if you are blocking their supplies, you are climbing to the next ladder of escalation. You are not trying to diffuse a situation, you are trying to aggravate a situation. So in these circumstances, based on past history and based on my reading of conflicts, I would have to come to an assessment that this war between Thailand and Cambodia is going to escalate, and it's going to escalate at a level that it may cause a land offensive and air offensive. You're also being launched from both the sides, and both the sides may actually get drawn into a war-like situation, because right now it is not aggravated to that extent. So I would like to see what is the response of the United States now, because this situation is being, I think, watched by the United States very, very closely. And what kind of communication is emanating from the United States to the leaders of Thailand and Cambodia would like to be watched in the next 24 hours, I believe. because in case this economic blockade is not released, I have a fear that we are going to see an escalation on the borders also.
Yes, Dr. Kachar, thank you very much for joining us and taking the time to speak to us here on NewsX World. We now move on and over to Europe, and Russian air defense forces have reportedly destroyed at least 15 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles in the airspace over the Moscow region. The Moscow mayor has said that the majority of these UAVs were downed outright, but 3 were intercepted a few hours back. The mayor has also added that emergency response units are deployed at the wreckage sites and that they are examining the fragments and debris. Earlier today, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that its air forces had shot down 130 Ukrainian drones overnight, out of which 15 were headed to Moscow. As per sources, Ukrainian forces have been periodically sending drones towards Russia's capital that potentially disrupts its airport activities. Now joining us is Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert. He joins us live from Brussels. Thank you very much, Gilbert, as always. Great to speak to you. Russia says it's downed 130 of these Ukrainian drones, and with 15 of which were headed to Moscow. If Russia's air defences are indeed so effective, why are drones still reaching Russia's most protected airspace with such regularity?
I think you have to look at factors outside the immediate conflict and look rather at negotiations that are ongoing between the Ukrainians, Europeans, and Mr. Vitkov. From the very beginning of this war, the war is being led, directed by Mr. Zelensky, who is not a military commander by training, but who is a politician who is exercising every opportunity to score what we could call public relations victories. And this is in that tradition. It has served the Ukrainian side very well insofar as the objective is to get further aid to Ukraine from its Western partners. So the negotiations are going on. He is going to step up in the drone attacks on Russia, I'd say by 4 to 5 times over the level of attacks going on before this stage of negotiations. And it is to impress Ukraine supporters in the West that the country continues the fight and is capable of inflicting harm on Russia. That's what it's all about.
Gilbert, another huge development today. Of course, Ukraine has conceded its will to NATO membership. Analysts say that this won't make any difference in peace negotiations due to the fact that Ukraine still wants those security guarantees from the United States and Europe. What's your reading?
I think you're very correct in your assessment, because the security guarantees, it sounds very innocent. It's not innocent at all. The issue that brought Russia into launch its special military operation in February 2022 was that effectively Ukraine had become a NATO member. It didn't have the piece of paper to put on the wall showing that it is a member, but effectively the level of coordination with NATO procedures, the level of technical assistance that Ukraine was receiving had brought its armed forces up to NATO candidate status. And that is what Mr. Zelensky is trying to sneak into the negotiations at this point. If there is a security guarantee, what he means is boots on the ground. He means having NATO and especially the United States military personnel on the ground to help protect Ukraine. And that is precisely what the Russians will never accept. So in setting these conditions, Mr. Zelensky is trying to put Russia in the position of being the naysayer and the side that is hindering conclusion of peace. Nothing of the sort. But what Mr. Zelensky is doing is making conditions that he knows the Russians cannot possibly accept.
Okay, Gilbert Doctorow, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always. We now move on over to the west coast of the United States, and according to reports, Hollywood director Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, have been found dead at their Los Angeles home. Early reports suggest both suffered lacerations consistent with knife wounds. The Los Angeles Police Department confirmed 2 bodies were discovered in their Brentwood residence and have launched a homicide investigation. Authorities say no suspects have been identified and the investigation is still in its early stages. Rob Reiner directed iconic films including The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Stand By Me and A Few Good Men. He was also known for his political activism. His wife, Michelle Singer Rayner, was a photographer and captured the image of Donald Trump for his book, Trump, The Art of the Deal. Authorities continue to investigate the circumstances surrounding their deaths. Reactions are pouring in after the deaths of Rob and Michelle Rayner. Former President Barack Obama said him and his wife are heartbroken and praised Rob's commitment to goodness and social change. Former Vice President Kamala Harris called them dear friends and remembered their love and legacy. California Governor Gavin Newsom said Rob's films and advocacy touched countless lives. Actors, comedians and colleagues also shared their shock, describing the Rayners as inspirational figures who left an unforgettable impact on Hollywood and beyond. We move now to Latin America, and in Colombia, a school bus plunged off a cliff, killing at least 17 people and injuring 20 others. Authorities confirmed the victims include 16 students and the bus driver. The bus was returning to Medellin from the Caribbean town of Tolu, where students had been celebrating their graduation. The vehicle fell approximately 40 meters into a ravine, leaving several injured in serious condition. Emergency teams rushed to the remote site to rescue survivors and transport the injured to nearby hospitals. Governor Andres Zulian described the incident as devastating, saying it cast a dark shadow over the community. Colombian President Gustavo Petro also expressed his grief, offering condolences to families and stressing the tragedy of young lives lost during a celebratory trip. Authorities have launched an investigation into the cause of the crash as the nation mourns the heartbreaking loss. Let's take a listen in to some of the reactions.
Una excursión de jóvenes que celebraban su graduación y se dirigían desde Sucre, las playas de Sucre, al municipio de Bello, del liceo antioqueño de esta localidad, sufrieron un accidente en zona rural de Remedios, Antioquia. A la fecha tenemos más de una docena de ellos que infortunadamente perdieron la vida y más de 20 personas heridas.
Now, iRobot, the maker of the Roomba vacuum cleaner, has filed for bankruptcy protection. The company will go private after being bought by PK Robotics, its primary manufacturer. iRobot has struggled with increased competition from cheaper rivals, including Chinese company Ecovacs. The company's profits have been affected despite remaining strong in markets like the United States and Japan. New US tariffs, including a 46% levy on imports from Vietnam, have hurt iRobot's bottom line. The company is also carrying $190 million in debt from a 2023 loan. PK Robotics will take full control of iRobot, cancelling the debt and acquiring the company's equity. Other creditors will be paid in full. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.